Brutal encounter. Evil witch haunts our cabin at midnight. You won't believe what happened. The wind howled through the forest like a banshee, sending chills down your spine. Each gust slammed against the wooden cabin, rattling its walls and shuttering the windows. Inside, a group of friends huddled close, their laughter momentarily covering the uneasy whispers of the trees outside. But the night held secrets, dark and twisted, just waiting to rear their ugly heads. The first sign of trouble came when Clara noticed her breath fogging in the air, a strange juxtaposition in the warm glow of the fire. It shouldn't have been cold inside, yet her teeth chattered like they were dancing to a morbid tune. Suddenly, the flickering candle on the table extinguished, plunging the room into a suffocating darkness. Faces went pale, eyes wide as the shadows seemed to stretch and curl around them. "What was that?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if raising it would summon whatever malevolence lingered just beyond their sight. Just then, a bone-chilling creak echoed from upstairs, like the slow march of something creeping closer. Clara's heart raced, each thump sending electric jolts through her veins. She could feel the tension thick in the air, a palpable force tightening her throat as if someone had flicked a switch. Dread flooded the room. A moment later, they all freeze as a guttural cackle cut through the silence, broken and otherworldly. The sound clawed at their insides, leaving sharp pangs of fear gnawing at their souls. The candles flickered back to life momentarily, illuminating the frantic expressions on their faces. Someone glanced at the staircase, a tremor in their hand that no one dared to acknowledge aloud. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." No sooner had Jake hit the light switch when an icy wind roared through the room, extinguishing their safety once again. Clara could see a shadow darting at the edge of her vision, too quick to process, yet powerful enough to make her want to scream. The others felt it too, a collective dread sweeping over them, heavy and dark, clinging to their skins like a second layer. With every heartbeat, the creeping terror became more real. They heard whispers echoing from above, words they could barely understand, twisted incantations that sent chills racing down their spines. The walls seemed to close in, but there was no escape. Would they be the next victims of the witch rumored to haunt the woods? Or was this all just the twisted play of their imagination? As they huddled together, reality felt like a thin veil about to rip away. They had to uncover the truth. But how? Determined eyes locked onto the old stairs, questions swirling in the air heavier than fog. What awaited them upstairs? And what dark secrets lay hidden within the heart of the witch's curse? The chilling echoes of laughter turned into muffled gasps as Jake stepped toward the staircase, every creak of the wood beneath his feet sounding like a warning bell. The whispers from above grew louder, and Clara felt each syllable scrape against her nerves. "We can't just sit here," Jake muttered, his voice strained. "We need to find out what's going on." "Are you out of your mind?" Clara shot back, her eyes darting around the room, seeking some semblance of safety. But deep down, she felt the pull of curiosity mingled with horror. If there was a witch haunting them, fleeing wasn't an option. They had to confront this head-on. Ed, the skeptic of the group, shook his head, clutching a flashlight like it was a lifeline. "Guys, it's probably just an animal or no?" Clara interrupted, her frustration boiling over. "That wasn't an animal. We all heard it." She could see the fear flicker across Ed's face, just as it had on everyone else's. They all felt it, the oppressive atmosphere, the crawling terror. They were ensnared in something far darker than any of their campfire stories. Jake swallowed hard and took a deep breath before moving to grip the railing. "We need to know what it wants." With that, he took the first step up, and the others hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. Clara took a breath, heart hammering in her chest, and followed him. Each step creaked ominously, sending a shiver up her spine as they ascended. The whispers reached a fever-pitch, disembodied voices swirled together in a chaotic symphony. The air thickened to the point of suffocation, wrapping around them like a chilling embrace. They reached the landing, the hallway ahead dark and foreboding. Shadows loomed in the corners of their vision, dancing just out of reach of the flashlight's beam. "I don't like this one bit," Ed whispered, his voice quaking. As if on cue, the air turned frigid as the candlelight flickered back to life behind them, illuminating their figures against the darkness. The sudden light cast an eerie glow, and Clara could see Jake's face, pale and resolute as he stood at the end of the hall. Then, from the very end, a door creaked open slowly, a dark, gaping void that beckoned them forth. Clara's heart pounded. Somewhere in that room lay the source of the whispers, the heart of the witch's curse. This was it. "Maybe we should go back?" Edda's voice quivered, but Jake shook his head fiercely. "No turning back now. We can't leave without knowing." The door seemed to breathe from within, exhaling a sense of dread that was almost tangible. They moved forward, the shadows shifting ominously against the walls. The whispers seemed to coalesce into words, urging them to hurry, pleading, "Help us, did you hear that?" Clara gasped, her voice trembling. The air thickened around them, suffused with an intense sorrow. It was calling to them someone or something in pain. With a leap of faith, Jake kicked the door open, and the group flooded into the dimly lit room. Eyes widened at what they saw. An amalgamation of ancient carvings and worn artifacts scattered around, each exuding an unmistakable aura of malice. Then, their gaze fell upon her, a figure cloaked in shadow, her presence both terrifying and compelling. "Who dares disturb my sleep?" The witch's voice dripped with a malevolence that sent chills racing down Clara's spine. The room pulsed with energy, and Clara felt herself retreating, the primal instinct to flee clawing at her mind. But it was too late. The curse had begun, and they were no longer just observants. They were part of the game now, shackled to the witch's whims. And as the walls began to thrum with a pulse like a heartbeat, Clara wondered, had they really come to find the truth, or were they simply feeding the witch's insatiable hunger? "Run!" Ed screamed, and the chaos erupted around them. What choice would they make next? And were they truly ready to face the wicked truth waiting for them? The night was just beginning. The air crackled with palpable fear as Clara, Jake, and Ed stumbled backward from the figure in shadow. The witch's laughter echoed around them, twisting with the whispers, merging chaos and dread into a palpable force that surged through the room. Clara's mind raced, her breathing rapid and shallow. "What do we do?" she gasped, eyes darting from the witch to Jake, whose face was a mask of determination marred by terror. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. Yet, despite his fear, he took a step forward, an act of defiance against the darkness. "What do you want?" he demanded, his tone resolute but quaking. The witch's shadow curled around her as she smirked, a grin both wicked and alluring. "Oh, I want so much more than you can imagine," her voice quieted, slithering through the air like smoke. "You have entered my domain, children. This is no mere haunt. It's a prison of lost souls. You can either join them or help me free them." "Free them?" Ed echoed incredulously, the flash of his light flickering against the walls. "Why would we help you?" The witch's laughter twisted his question into a soft melody, dripping with malice. "Because, my dear boy, they are already part of you. Your fear feeds me. Your dread keeps me alive. Help me find the one who cursed me, and perhaps the souls I've captured can be set free." Hesitation gripped Clara's chest. "How do we know you're not lying?" she demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. There was no truth in the shadows that surrounded her, and every instinct screamed for them to flee. "Ah, my lovely Clara," the witch cooed, her voice dripping with an eerie sweetness. "You know that curiosity is a double-edged sword. Either you will discover truths that shatter your perception or continue living in ignorance." Jake clenched his fists, weighing their options in the dim light. The shadows flickered, and for a moment, Clara caught a glimpse of tormented faces trapped in the walls behind the witch. A shiver ran down her spine. If we help you, how do we know we'll be safe? She questioned, her voice breaking. The witch stepped closer, the shadows swirling around her like a living cloak. Safety is an illusion, but there is power in knowledge, sweet Clara. Together we could become something greater. Help me, and I shall guide you to the truth behind your greatest fears. A chilling silence settled over them, punctuated only by the rhythmic thrum echoing from the walls. Jake looked at Clara, and in his eyes, she saw the same flicker of anguish reflected back, the fear of losing themselves, of becoming lost souls just like those trapped within the walls. Then Ed broke the silence. I'm not listening to her. He raised the flashlight, its beams scattering shadows around the room, illuminating the haunting carvings. We can find another way. But as if responding to his defiance, the room quivered. Books flew from shelves, and the air swirled with a sudden gust that nearly knocked them off their feet. Foolish mortals, the witch hissed, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. You can't escape your destiny. Clara's heart pounded, fear morphing into a resolve. We have to stick together, she whispered to Jake and Ed. If she thinks she can manipulate us, she's got another thing coming. Let us think this through, Jake said, glancing at the witch. What if we find this person you speak of? What happens then? Yes, the witch sibilantly urged. You bring me the one who cursed me. You have a chance to be heroes or succumb to despair. Choose wisely. The walls hummed, the ground vibrating with energy. Okay, Clara thought, face pale but unwavering. They could either be pawns in this sinister game or take the reins of their fate. She stole a look at Jake, reading the resolve in his azure eyes. Let us make our move, he said finally, determination lacing his words. Then the witch breathed. Let the hunt begin. The air thickened, and a dark portal began to open behind the witch, a swirling vortex of shadows and fragmented screams. Something deep within it stirred a presence both terrifying and compelling, beckoning them toward the unknown. Will you face the truth? The witch challenged, her grin widening. Or will you vanish like the others? As they took hesitant steps toward the void, Clara felt the very fabric of reality shifting, and they were about to plunge into the depths of something that promised salvation or damnation. What awaited on the other side? They were about to find out. They stepped closer to the void. Each heartbeat thudded in Clara's chest, a war drum echoing against the rising tide of shadows. Jake glanced back at Ed, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but resolved to face the unknown. Together, he whispered, taking Clara's hand. Even in the grasp of dread, warmth surged through her at his touch. They were a fractured mirror, each of them reflecting the fears contained within. The witch's voice slithered through the dark air. Time is of the essence, children. The portal won't wait forever. Her eyes glinted like obsidian, pools of malice urging them into the darkness. Taking a deep breath, Clara stepped into the swirling shadows. A cold, clammy wind whooshed past, chilling her to the bone. She felt Jake's grip tighten on her hand, anchoring her in a reality that began to distort with every second they lingered. Ed followed behind, flashlight beam bouncing wildly against the encroaching dark. It felt as if tendrils of shadow were reaching for him, pulling at the edges of his fear. We need to keep moving, he urged, voice high with panic. What lay ahead was shrouded in murky uncertainty. As they stepped beyond the threshold, the room transformed into an endless corridor, walls lined with doors that pulsated an ominous glow. Each door whispered tales of souls lost to the witch's insatiable hunger. Clara's heart dropped. Were they merely jumping from one nightmare to another? Where do we even start? Jake asked, scanning the eerie hallway. The faces they glimpsed earlier were now visible through the wooden slats, twisted expressions of anguish, fingers clawing desperately at the sealed doors. The sound of their muted cries hung heavily in the air, tightening around Clara's throat. Back that way, Ed shouted, pointing toward a door just off to their left, older and more decayed than the others. I swear I felt something, like a pulse when we passed it. He scooted ahead, curiosity momentarily overcoming his fear. Clara and Jake exchanged glances but followed, the adrenaline blurring their rational thoughts. What was beyond that door? Ed pushed the door open, an unsettling creak reverberating through the silence. Inside, the air was frigid, swirling like fog that folded and split as they made their way in. Candles flickered, casting anxious shadows that danced against the stone walls. Illuminating a figure huddled in the corner, it was a woman, gaunt and fear-stricken, with hollowness in her eyes that mirrored the souls they had seen lurking behind the witch. Clara's breath hitched. "What happened to you?" she asked, stepping forward instinctively, concern outweighing caution. The woman looked up, her eyes wide, reflecting a mix of terror and desperate hope. She'll take you too. The witch. Don't trust her." Her voice trembled, desperation lacing every word. "Run while you can." Suddenly, the candles flickered violently, and the door slammed shut with a resounding crash. The room plunged into utter darkness, the shadows consuming every sliver of light. Clara shouted, voice shaking. Panic surged like ice through her veins. "I'm here," he shouted back, barely above a whisper. "What do we do?" The lights flickered back on, but now the witch stood in the doorway, her silhouette framing a doorway to their escape. "The truth is not for the faint-hearted," she taunted, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. "Choose wisely, children. One must pay the price." A dreadful realization settled in Clara's gut. They needed to decide. They could lose themselves fighting her, or perhaps they could become the heroes the lost souls needed. But what awaited them beyond the darkness? The air thickened, filled with the weight of the decision before them. Clara clenched her fists, glancing between Jake and Ed, fearful of taking a wrong turn. What was the price and who would pay it? The walls trembled, begging them to act before the darkness swallowed them whole. Clara's heart raced, drowning out the echoes of the witch's twisted words. Fear twisted in her gut like a serrated knife. The woman in the corner trembled, and Clara sensed that the shadows were tightening, edged fingers creeping closer, hungry. "What do we do?" Ed's voice was frantic, rising above the oppressive silence. They all stared at the witch, her smile utterly devoid of warmth, each second stretching into infinity as tension clung to them like cobwebs. "Choose or lose," she hissed, her eyes glinting with sadistic pleasure. The walls pulsed as if alive, each heartbeat a reminder that time was slipping through their fingers. "Clara, we can't let her win," Jake urged, squeezing her hand tighter. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, a flicker of hope in the suffocating dark. "Do we really have a choice?" Ed countered, nudging the flashlight toward the witch. The beam quivered in the air as if anticipating a swift demise. "Every choice comes with a price," the witch mused, gliding closer. "You can leave, but one of you must stay behind, bound to my will. Or choose the door. But beware. Their cries aren't for salvation, they're a warning." Clara's throat constricted. "You want us to choose one of us to sacrifice?" The words tasted bitter, like ash in her mouth. How could she ever make such a decision? It felt insidious, an act of betrayal. The witch's laughter echoed through the room, a chilling melody that sent shivers racing along Clara's spine. "I don't care who you choose. Once the choice is made, your souls will be mine. Forever." "No!" Clara shouted, as if her voice could shatter the dark spell wrapping around them. "We're not giving anyone up." Defiance. "How delicious," the witch said, circling them, her presence suffocating. "But just remember, time slips away like sand through your fingers." Just then, the candles flickered again, illuminating a flicker of movement in the shadows. Figures began to rise from the corners, all women, their faces pale and gaunt eyes hollow yet pleading. The anguish in their expressions mirrored the woman they had seen earlier. Each of their mouths moved, silently calling out, begging. Clara's heart ached. "Please, don't let her take you," one of the spirits whispered, her eyes glassy with lost hope. "We need to escape together. There's a way out. You can find it." "Find what?" Jake implored, looking around, anxiety etched on his face. "There's nothing here but her lies. Your hearts hold the key, The woman continued, her voice gaining strength. Trust one another. Whatever happens, hold on to your bond. Trust each other? Ed echoed, a glimmer of understanding illuminating his features. What if that's the price? The witch hissed, clearly unnerved by their sudden inclination to fight back. Foolish children, you'll never escape. You'll doom yourselves. The heavy air suddenly vibrated as the room spun and the walls seemed to close in. Clara steadied herself, her fear morphing into resolve. We can't let her win. We have each other, let us hold on. The three of them formed a huddle, hands clasping tight, hearts hammering as they felt the weight of their bond in that moment. The witch's laughter faded, replaced by the eerie whispers of the spirits around them. Together, Clara spoke, voice fierce. We will not be broken. Let's find that key. The shadows writhed, retreating slightly as if shaken by their unity. But was it too late? The witch was still a force to be reckoned with, her power palpable. Ready to swallow them whole with a final push, Clara turned towards the pulsating door at their right, the one that had somehow felt different. This way. We don't have any time left. They lunged toward the door, but as they did, a thunderous roar erupted. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the very foundation of the corridor shaking as if it was alive. Was this the end? Would their bond be enough to hold back the darkness? With each heartbeat, the shadows tightened their grip, demanding the price. A swirling gust ripped through the corridor as the horrors pressed onward. Would they find salvation within that door? Or would they stumble into the deeper abyss of the witch's world? The moment of truth was upon them. Clara's breath caught as they darted towards the door, dread clawing at her insides. The air crackled with tension, and the walls pulsed like a living organism, reacting to their every move. She could hear the woman's spectral whispers echoing behind them, a haunting symphony urging them on. Together trust the bond with one final leap. Jake reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold against his palm, sending shockwaves up his arm. Clara's heart thundered in her chest, louder than the roar of collapsing walls. She glanced back at the witch, who had halted, her expression a mixture of fury and intrigue. Such a foolish choice, the witch shouted, her voice an echo that reverberated like thunder. You think you can escape me? Remember, every action has a consequence. What does she mean? Ed cried, his eyes wide with fear. The shadows kept swirling, eager to ensnare them. Just open the door, Clara urged, panic seeping into her words. We have to go. Jake turned the knob and pushed the door open. A blinding light poured through the crack, illuminating the horror behind them. Shadows writhed, screeching in torment, battling against the purity of that light. It felt like hope wrapped in fire, dragging them forward. As they rushed through the threshold, the world shifted violently. The brightness engulfed them, and for a moment, Clara thought they'd made it. But then the floor dropped from beneath, and they tumbled into darkness once more. They fell, spiraling through a freezing void that seemed to stretch on forever, the anguished cries of spirits fading into desperate echoes. When they thumped to a halt, they found themselves on cold, hard ground. Clara pushed herself to her feet, shaking off the disorientation. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust, but what she saw nearly knocked the wind out of her. They were in a clearing, surrounded by twisted trees contorted like wretched souls reaching out. The air was thick with mist, muffling sounds and twisting forms. In the distance, shadows began to take shape, figures appearing like phantoms emerging from the fog. Where are we? Jake murmured, glancing around with wide, terrified eyes. Is this her world? Ed whispered, backing away slowly. This place, it feels wrong. Stay close, Clara instructed, gathering strength. The weight of dread pressed down on her, a reminder of the witch lurking behind every shadow. The spirits' cries rang in her ears as she felt their presence near. We have to keep moving, something isn't right. Ahead, a shimmering light flickered, a beacon in the chaos. It pulsed like a heartbeat, thrumming and drawing Clara toward it. That light, it might lead us out, she proposed, her voice steadier as hope began to stir within her. But as they approached, the ground trembled again, and the shadows surged closer, swirling faster. Clara's heart raced as she sensed their anger. Hurry! But what if it's a trap? A loud crash behind them made her blood run cold. The witch had followed them, wreathed in shadows, her eyes blazing with fury. You thought you could escape? You're still in my grip. Clara stole a glance at Jake and Ed. Panic reflected in their eyes. The energy between them crackled, a blend of fear and defiance. They had come this far. Would they stand together or let chaos tear them apart? With no time left to hesitate, Clara reached out for the light, but as she did, a bone-chilling roar erupted from the darkness behind, freezing her in place. The ground shook violently, and the shadows lunged forward, claws outstretched, desperate to take hold. Now what? Ed yelled, confusion mounting. Together, Clara screamed, gripping her friend's hands tighter. We can't let her win. But would their bond be enough to hold against the looming wrath? As the shadows closed in and the witch's laughter pierced the air, Clara understood that this was only the beginning. Would they fight? Or were they doomed to become another part of the witch's twisted tale? The light flickered, and with it, hope began to wane, leaving them ensnared in the depths of darkness. What awaited them next? A deafening roar shook the ground beneath them. A beast awakened from its slumber. Clara felt the vibrations in her bones, an instinctual warning flaring within her. She didn't have time to think, only to act. Keep your eyes on the light, she shouted, her voice barely rising above the chaos. Jake and Ed nodded, fear etched on their faces. She could feel their collective dread forming a shield around their hearts. They were all in this together, and together they would face whatever nightmare lay ahead. The shadows were shifting now like a living tide, a swirling mass of anguish and malevolence. Clara swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat. Just beyond the roiling darkness lay the shimmering light, beckoning them. It felt surreal, a stark contrast to the cold dread that surrounded them. Suddenly, the witch emerged from the shadows, her form grotesque and twisted, eyes flickering with dark flames. You think you can find refuge in the light? I thrive in the dark. The depths of her voice resonated, each word sharp as a blade, sending ripples of fear through the trio. Clara could feel her strength wavering, the threat seeping into her very being. Clara, what do we do? Jake quavered, eyes wide, darting between the light and the advancing shadows. Trust each other. We need to form a circle. Our bond is our strength. Clara urged, her determination solidifying like a shield. They gathered, hands clasped tightly. Their breaths synchronized a desperate rhythm against the chaos. The air around them shimmered, charged with an energy that pulsed. In that moment, Clara felt it, the warmth of Jake's palm, the steady grip of Ed's fingers. It was life, it was hope, it was everything that mattered. Don't let go, Clara cried. The shadows hissed as if their very names scorched the air. As they concentrated on the light, a strange phenomenon occurred. The light flickered wildly, dazzling sparks igniting from their joined hands. Clara's heart raced. It was as if they were creating a barrier. With each breath, they whispered words of power, words of defiance. The witch snarled, her fury tangible, and began reaching toward them. Clara could feel the darkness closing in, a suffocating blanket wrapped tightly around them. Push it away, she urged, feeling the shadows claw at her mind. They were so close to being consumed. Suddenly, from the very edge of the light, a figure emerged, an old man with a long white beard, clad in flowing robes that shimmered like the stars. His eyes held centuries of wisdom and power. You must believe, he bellowed, his voice booming through the darkness like a lighthouse calling in a storm. Who are you? Jake gasped, awe and confusion mixing in his voice. I am the guardian of the light, he declared, stepping forward, banishing shadows back with the mere presence of his aura. Your bond has the power to break the witch's hold. But you must believe not only in each other, but in yourselves. Again the witch let out a spine-chilling scream, the darkness swirling violently around her. You will pay for this. Your souls will be mine. It faltered, but how? How do we defeat her? By declaring your truth, the guardian commanded. Your pain, Your fears, all those chains she has tightened around you, declare them here. Clara's heart thudded loudly in her chest. What truth could she say that would free her? The shadows trembled, the oppression nearly crushing. But there was a glimmer, a flash of something deeper lurking within her. Together she started, conviction rising within her. We are stronger than our fears. We stand against you, witch. The moment her voice rumbled through the air, a wave of light surged, pushing back the encroaching shadows, the energy igniting between them. Would they finally overcome the darkness? Or was this declaration merely the start of a greater battle? The light flickered ominously, leaving them with a choice to face the truth or to falter. But as they stood confidently, ready to fight, the ground buckled, and Clara sensed that the true test was just about to begin. What awaited them on the other side of their declaration? The ground shuddered again, a violent earthquake of emotions crashing through Clara and her friends. The shadows lurked closer, a creeping sensation that clawed at their throats. For one hollow moment, she thought all hope had slipped away. But it was then that the energy between their hands intensified, fueled by fear, but also by a deeper, unyielding resolve. Keep your mind steady, the guardian shouted, his voice slicing through the chaos like a knife. Do not falter. Clara felt the vibrations of her heartbeat echo inside her skull, the weight of the impending darkness threatening to draw her down into despair. The witch's laughter rang out, cold and sinister, taunting them. Strength? You think you can wield strength against me? I am the fear that dances in your dreams, the darkness that creeps into your mind. The shadows surged forward, claw-like tendrils reaching for them, eager to extinguish the light they had just ignited. But Clara had heard the guardian's words. She could almost see the bond they forged illuminating the path ahead. Chanting softly, she focused on the memories that brought warmth to her heart. Of course, Jake whispered, his eyes darting between the witch and Clara. We need to remember what gives us hope. Our truths can drive her back. His voice trembled like a fragile leaf, but Clara could see the flame kindling in his eyes. Yes, our truth is our shield, Ed added, gripping Clara's hand tighter. What are you afraid of? Clara shouted, her voice tinged with urgency. She stared into the maelstrom of darkness, daring it to advance. What about you, Jake? Loss, Jake cried out, the raw edge of his fear cutting through the night air. The feeling of not being enough, the fear of losing you too. The ground quaked violently as his words struck, but Clara felt a jolt of energy surge through the group. Just like that, flickers of light erupted from their hands, each tiny explosion echoing with truth. Good, the guardian roared, drawing strength from their words. More. Speak your fears. A wave of confidence washed over Clara. I'm afraid of failing, of letting you down, she shouted, pouring her insecurities out into the roaring darkness. But I will not. I choose to fight. As the light crackled and flickered, Clara suddenly felt empowered, their connection sealing tighter. The shadows reeled, hissing against the warmth that enveloped them. Ed stepped forward, his voice steady despite the encroaching threat. I fear my anger will consume me. Pushing those I love away, then let that fear be your strength. The guardian instructed, emboldening their combined spirit. Transform it into a weapon. With the trio holding fast, a bright explosion of light erupted from their clasped hands, as if ignited by 1,000 sunrises. Clara's heart soared. She could visualize the dark figure recoiling, her twisted smile faltering for the first time. Together, Jake cried, pressing closer. We can withstand this. In a surge fueled by their united truths, the three shouted as one, their voices filling the void with clarity and fierce defiance. You have no power here, witch. We are stronger than you. But suddenly, with a bone-chilling crack, the ground beneath them split wide open, revealing an abyss filled with swirling mist and echoes of despair. Clara's stomach dropped. This was no ordinary darkness. It felt sentient, eager to swallow them whole. Watch out, the guardian shouted, his eyes wide, but it was too late. The shadows howled, lunging toward them with ferocity like a ravenous beast. Clara barely had a moment to process the churning void before she lost her grip on her friends. A disorienting pull dragged her toward the abyss, the air thickening around her, squeezing her chest like a vice. She reached for Jake and Ed, panic blooming in her chest. Would her declaration hold? Or would they all be cast into the depths of the witch's lair, lost to darkness forever? In that heavy moment, surrounded by chaos and fear, Clara wondered if their truth was strong enough. And as the darkness crept closer, swallowing the light, another scream echoed. Was it hers, or the memories that haunted her? What hidden truths lay buried in their hearts that could save them, or would they be dragged down into eternal night? The answer lingered just out of reach, tantalizingly close yet unimaginably distant. Clara's arms flailed as she felt the ground give way beneath her. It wasn't just the pull of the abyss that terrified her. It was the thought of losing Jake and Ed, of being swallowed whole by the darkness. Dread bloomed within her, fierce and choking, as strands of shadow snaked toward her face, wrapping tightly around her like a vice. "Don't let go." Ed's voice pierced the chaos. His shout propelled Clara forward, a lifeline through the chaos. She felt him grasp her wrist, his fingers a firm anchor in the swarming maelstrom of despair. "Clara, hold on to us," Jake added, desperately trying to pull her back. He was close, but the shadows were ravenous, bellowing as they clawed further at the light. She could see his fear etched into his features, and it fueled her own with a great effort. Clara forced her voice into the fray. "We are not alone. Together we can push back the dark." In that moment, clarity struck like a bolt of lightning. The realization that she couldn't just depend on her own fears to fuel their fight. It was deeper, a collective essence that thrived within their connection. It was love, friendship, and the shared memories that illuminated them. "Remember the campfires?" Clara cried, drawing on nostalgic warmth. "Every laughter shared? Every story told under the stars? That's our light." The very air around them wavered, shadows hesitating as the light surged from her memories. Ed's eyes widened as he joined in. "And the hikes, the runs, the fun. Don't forget that time we got lost and found a rainbow at the end of our worst day." Each word they spoke seemed to carve out a pocket of sanctuary amidst the encroaching darkness. Clara could sense the pull weakening, the shadows shying away, hissing like fiery serpents. "Keep it going." The guardian howled, a rallying cry that sent shivers through the ether. "Memories are powerful. I remember the moments we said we'd never give up," Jake exclaimed, his voice rising above the tumult. "Falling apart isn't an option, only together can we stand." The light exploded from their hands, luminous and blinding, a glorious counterpoint to the growing gloom. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as though pierced by arrows of sunlight. But they were not out of danger yet. The ground trembled more violently now, and cracks spread like veins through the earth. Suddenly, a voice, deep and guttural, echoed from the abyss. "You think you can defy me? I feast on your fears, your doubts. I am the truth you hide from." Clara felt the air thicken, as if the witch herself were materializing from the shadowy depths. She could barely see the spectral form coalescing at the edge of the chasm, a twisted form of terror that took shape from their very fears. "Focus." The guardian's voice broke through the panic. Clara clutched her friends tighter. "This is your moment. Speak your truths." The very fabric of energy between Clara, Jake, and Ed crackled with intensity. Clara swept her gaze toward Jake, finding strength in his trembling yet determined face. "I refuse to let you control me." "Me too," Ed shouted, the dam of fear in his chest bursting forth. "You can't own our past if we choose to define our own future." With a fierce roar, they shouted together, forces converging. "We are the light. You have no dominion here." The power surged, a storm of brightness erupting before them, shattering the darkness. The shadows screeched, retreating from the brilliance of their united defiance. But the voice from the abyss laughed, rich with malice, promising that this wasn't the end. "Come back. Return to me. I will show you how weak you are." A flickering anger ignited inside Clara. "No, we are stronger than you'll ever understand." But just as victory seemed close, the ground began to crack wider. The air split with a deafening roar, and the oppressive darkness attempted to swallow the light in a last desperate lunge. Clara's heart raced. The battle was far from over. Would their truth be enough to seal the darkness forever? Or would they have to venture closer to the depths to discover the true nature of the witch's power? As the ground quaked beneath their feet, Clara knew the answer was lurking just out of sight, waiting to be unearthed. Clara, Jake, and Ed's world spun as darkness and light fought for dominance. The ground beneath their feet cracked. It felt like they were standing on the edge of existence itself. Shadows twisted and swirled, roaring with rage, their angry spirits trying to drag the trio down into the abyss of despair. "Hold on," Ed shouted, gripping Clara's wrist tighter. She could feel her pulse beating in tandem with his, their hearts sinking in defiance against the witch's power. In that moment, Clara glanced at Jake. His expression was fierce yet vulnerable, the fear of losing everything visible in his eyes. "What now?" he breathed, but there was a glint of determination standing strong against the tide of darkness. Together, Clara declared, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every soul trapped here." With a swift motion, she raised her free hand and shouted, "We are the light of friendship. We remember every laugh around the campfire, every adventure we shared. That's who we are." The words shot out like arrows, and the oppressive shadows shivered as they buzzed with unrest. A warmth spread inside her, infectiously igniting Jake and Ed with a newfound energy. They echoed her words, memories flooding back with glorious intensity. "Those moments defined us," Jake shouted. "We choose our futures together." Ed joined in with fierce conviction. "You can't own our past. Every night we laughed and shared secrets made us stronger." The air shimmered as their combined truths transformed into a purifying light. Fierce and proud, the shadows snapped at the duo's radiance, recoiling as if stung. Clara could feel the darkness slipping, unraveling like an old tapestry as hope surged forward. But the witch's laughter echoed, piercing through their momentum like shattered glass. "You think this will save you? You are still just children playing at courage." Her twisted silhouette emerged from the depths, larger and more grotesque than before. As terror washed over them, Clara felt her conviction waver. In that swirling onslaught of shadow and rage, doubts crept into her mind. Will we truly overcome her? The thought flickered just out of reach, but one glimpse of Jake's steadfast resolve renewed her spirit. "No," Jake shouted back at the rising darkness, igniting a fire in his heart. "You do not define us. We are bigger than our fears." With that proclamation, the trio erupted in unison, each voice lifting higher, stronger, echoing through the garden of shadows. "We have each other, and together we are invincible." The ground beneath them rumbled ominously, shattering further, but Clara held tightly to her friends. "Remember what binds us. It's not just the fear, it's the love that outweighs it." As their voices intertwined, the light radiated further, the darkness quaking in retreat. Shadows howled, gnashing their teeth, feeling the fierce bond challenge their very existence. The Gita's hold on the land wavered, the writhing tendrils clarifying for a moment beneath the brilliance they forged. Then, with a last exhaled roar, Clara, Jake, and Ed surged forward into the light, driving it deep into the heart of the darkness. The very fabric of reality trembled as they collided with the witch's power. The weight of their intertwined truths filled the air with adrenaline, turning it electric. In that instant, the realm of shadows twisted and convulsed. Rising winds howled like banshees, scattering the darkness into nothingness, as their declaration pierced through the fog of despair. "I choose hope," Clara bellowed with strength. "I choose love over fear." With that, a blinding light erupted from their grasp, sending shockwaves through the witch's malevolence. Screams of fury erupted from the darkness, but it was already retreating, collapsing around them like a broken chain. In an explosive burst, the witch shrieked, new, just before being drawn back, her form dissolving into the swirl of shadows. The reverberations echoed through the air, fading like dying thunder, as she disappeared forever. The ground stabilized. The world shifting as light filled the clearing. And suddenly it was quiet. The shadows evaporated, no longer a hungry presence, but merely remnants of past terrors. Clara, Jake, and Ed stood together, panting yet exhilarated, their hearts thudding in harmony. Did we really do it? Jake rasped, wide-eyed disbelief flickering across his face. Clara could hardly process the reality they deforged. I think we did. The warmth of the sun broke through the mist, bathing the clearing in golden light. The spirits they had seen earlier materialized, their ethereal forms glowing with gratitude. Thank you, they whispered, their voices flowing like a gentle breeze through the trees. You freed us. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. They had transformed fear into hope, darkness into light. She turned to her friends, embracing them tightly. We did this. Together. We stood as one. And with that, a sense of peace settled over them as they began to walk back through the clearing. The weight of the witch's hold had dissolved, leaving an expanse of endless possibilities fluttering in the wind like leaves. Their bond had forged a reality unbreakable, supporting them through both shadow and light as they stepped into the embrace of the forest. Clara glanced back one last time, a lingering glimmer of light illuminating the path behind them. They had conquered the darkness. They were free to choose their destinies now, together. That was something worth celebrating. Now this is where you come in. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Let's get this out there. And we want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.